John McMullen here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Break it with your bookie. Harrah's Resort, Bally's, Atlantic City, Wild Wild West are taking bets at the book. Wager today, gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. I did see, John, that you did tweet about Fultz this morning because, you know, obviously that shot's going all over the place. He said the ball slipped, by the way. I don't know if I saw any slippage there, but I'll take his word for it, I guess, for now.
Slippage.
Yes. But there's this story that him and Hanlon, now there was a story before that he wouldn't even shoot unless Hanlon was in the building. Now it's to the point where they don't even talk.
Yes. How did that even happen?
Did you hear that before?
I just heard
that he wouldn't shoot unless Hanlon was in the building?
No, I did not hear that. Now, if that's the case and I'm the Sixers and I know that Markelle Fultz will only shoot with Drew Hanlon in the building, I make sure that Drew Hanlon is in every single game. I don't care if you're playing in Siberia.
He's got a lot of other clients.
Front row ticket to that game, absolutely.
Well, John, I saw you tweeted about Fultz. He's been a major topic all day.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if that's true, if he wouldn't shoot unless Drew Hanlon's in the building, I don't want the kid. But plain and simple, I don't, pull the plug.
That's like Doug Peterson won't answer questions unless John McMullen's in the press corps right there.
That's understandable. But in this particular,
I ain't answering squat until McMullen gets here. I've heard him say that.
It's really, you're talking about the number one overall pick in the draft to have these kind of psyche issues, and you acknowledge, hey, we're in a different time. I mean, this wouldn't have been accepted 20 years ago. It just wouldn't have been. And maybe this is a better time. Maybe it is a better way to go about trying to help a kid like this. But the reality is, you're trying to win basketball games. He's not helping you win basketball games, and I don't see that turning around anytime soon. So you have to ask yourself a question. That's what I tweeted as an organization. Do you want to help them or you don't want to help them? And this has nothing to do with shooting coaches. This has nothing to do with basketball. This is, I don't know if it's anxiety. I don't know if it's other issues in his life, because the Sixers won't be above board about it. But it's not working. And it's time to take a step back. It could be time to go in another direction.
Wow.
I think Jimmy Butler will be tremendous for this team. This is the traditional alpha dog athlete mentality. I mean, he's the exact opposite. This is not a shrinking violet. He is not going to be afraid to take big shots. He's a closer. It's exactly what this team needs. And I don't see where this kid fits at this point. So it's either take a step back and try to rebuild him for 2 years down the road, but unfortunately, it's just not working.
Well, where the hell does Golden Tate fit? Because I'm still having questions about that.
Yeah, I ripped the Eagles for that. I don't know.
He did. Real quick, though, John, before you get into that, because I want to go into the Eagles, but I do want to read this quote from Brett Brown last night regarding Fultz. He was asked about the free throw. And by the way, that's illegal. You can't double pump at the foul line. That's a lane violation waiting to happen. You can't do that anymore.
That's the old Ewing rule.
Right. You can't double pump at the foul line. But Brown said it is difficult because you've got a human side and a responsibility to the individual, but mostly you've got a responsibility to the team. And somewhere in that pyramid of layers, I've got to figure it out. There's no book that tells you how to do that. I use my gut feel and best judgment and just keep it very candid. When I feel something or see something, and you can convey it to you, and you can convey it to you or the team or whatever, that's when I feel comfortable. And so Jimmy's going to come in, and we're going to make a decision on what that looks like, and we'll roll. But at the beginning, he says you've got a human side and a responsibility to the person, but most importantly, you've got a responsibility to the team. So if this kid's having issues, it sounds like he better figure them out himself.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. If you have and look at the Eagles and look at Brandon Brooks and anxiety issues. I'm not saying you should set the kid adrift and not try to help him, but I think you have to acknowledge there's an issue first before you can go about helping somebody. And I don't think the Sixers have been protecting him by keeping things like this quiet. I applaud Brett Brown for sort of admitting there's an issue that goes far beyond basketball. I mean, I joked about it. It's not a joke, but it's almost astonishing to not have confidence as the number one overall pick in the NBA draft, and that's where we are. He has no confidence in himself,
which is odd because at Washington, he legitimately was the entire team. He was about the only guy that shot on that team. John, he routinely shot 5, 6, 7 threes in a game. Twice he shot 10 threes in a game. So he had the green light to do whatever the hell he wanted there.
And I don't know what happened, and I wish I did. I back in high school, I knew kids in the AV club that had more confidence than Markelle Fultz. It's unbelievable what has happened to him. And I know, Mike, you talk about him being a backup point guard. I got news for you. T.J. McConnell's a better player than he is right now, and that's astonishing to say, but that's what it is. I mean,
let me ask you, though, John, real quick.
He does not deserve to be on the floor. Simple as that.
But there have been times in which we've seen him play well for 3 quarters. Now, it's not every single game, but there have been times in which we've seen him play well, and for whatever reason, trust, and there are a bunch of reasons, the cord is yanked in the fourth quarter, and he's gone to TJ and another semblance of a mismatched lineup. So I'm not disagreeing with you so much, John, but I'm just curious how much that factors in to where some of it, not all of it, has been we haven't even gotten the opportunity to tell how good he can be or at times in the fourth quarter because that's just not been a reality for whatever reason.
I've been a fan dating back to the early days of when the Sixers were trying to lose. Even in those instances, I haven't been a fan of Brett's rotations at times, but at this stage, when they're trying to win basketball games, I can't criticize him for not playing them in the fourth quarter. I would criticize him for playing him in crunch time. It would make no sense to me. And now that Jimmy's here, forget about it. He's not going to play in the fourth quarter in crunch time, and he doesn't deserve to play. And what Mike just said about the quote, he's got a responsibility to win basketball games. This isn't CYO. This isn't participation medals. This isn't trying to make the kid feel good. You're trying to win games.
But that's the conflict. It seems as if
professional sports is.
Right, but John, look at how you just laid it out. The competing elements of this scenario are for 3 quarters, it's, let's see what he can do.
The fact that they're trying to navigate through an NBA basketball game with this going on, and yet have a winning record is unbelievable.
But that's the point. Yeah. It's contradictory by nature to say for 3 quarters, this is all about getting Markelle Fultz better and growing him. Yet the fourth quarter, if it's close or we have a lead or we're down by 2, that's when we're all serious about winning a basketball game. And John's right. You have to have one or the other, and I deferred to his point, which is I'd rather them compete to win basketball games. But I watch it, and I think, who is this really fair to? It's not fair to Fultz. It's not fair to Brett Brown. It sure as hell isn't fair to the teammates. And the fans are looking at this not knowing what to expect.
Yeah, and I'm on record. I think the problem is the former and trying to get him right in the first 3 quarters. You can't get right mentally in the first 3 quarters of an NBA game. It's not going to work. I think it's a poor plan. Again, I was going back and forth with people. He refuses to acknowledge what the situation is. Maybe there isn't. I don't know the situation. It just looks to me from the outside like he has no confidence in himself. And again, if it's anxiety related, if there's something else behind it, I think first he has to admit it to himself, number one. And then maybe the Sixers can go ahead and start to try to salvage things. But I don't think it needs to be on the floor. I think it needs to be behind the scenes. This is not fair to Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and every other player on that team. I mean, again, in theory, this is a 50-win team. I think it certainly is with Jimmy Butler. In theory, this is a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. If something breaks your way come playoff time, who knows? You could be in the NBA Finals. This is, again, it's not about participation medals. It's not about trying to make him feel good about himself. It's about trying to win basketball games, and playing him is not the way to do that right now.
Yeah, it's bizarre because there are nights where he's a decent defender. You know, he's pretty good at defending. He seems to be, when Ben's off the floor, a willing guy to run the second unit. He passes the ball pretty well. I mean, to me, can he exist as a backup point guard and be valuable?
I mean, maybe down the road for another team. I don't think he's not the second best point guard on this team. So I don't see why you would play him other than the pedigree. I mean, we always talk about sports being the ultimate meritocracy. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the guy that helps you the most gets to play. That's not necessarily the case for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's from an organizational standpoint, and they don't want to admit a mistake, and they don't want egg on their face. But, hey, the Sixers have changed regimes. You know, Elton Brand's not responsible for this move and this draft choice. This is the perfect opportunity to say, you know what? Maybe we can help this kid, but the way to do that is to let him go and start over somewhere else. I think that's the ultimate end game, so why not get there as quickly as possible?
I have to be honest. I would sit here and talk basketball
I want you to lie.
with you. Well, okay, let's go to the Eagles. That's my lie. The honesty would be I can just sit here and have this conversation about the Sixers with you, John, for the next 20 minutes, but I guess at some point we should ask about the Eagles.
Well, Schwartz spoke today, by the way.
He did, and I get Jim Schwartz because I got a chance to cover him in Nashville, and I know you knowing the league, John, and also covering him up close and personal. I did not expect Jim Schwartz to come out and admit fault or say that there's going to be some drastic changes with the defense. It seems like Jim Schwartz is pretty much what we all expected him to say, which is, yeah, we can get better, but we're pretty much fine.
Yeah, I mean, from his perspective, and this is all coaches, and it's Doug in the offense as well because they're struggling. I mean, you can't change your identity after 9 games.
Right.
I mean, you can't do that. That's for the off season. When you look at yourself and say, this isn't going well, maybe I have to tweak this and that kind of stuff. So for now, it is what it is. Yeah, Jim Schwartz is not going to change his scheme. The reality is, if you're going to be honest about it, you know, if you projected this secondary week 1, he's down 4 or 5 guys. And the guys playing, Rasul Douglas and Avonte Maddox, a rookie 4th-round pick, and Shandon Sullivan, who Mike Gill didn't even know until 2 days ago.
Guilty.
I mean, Trey Sullivan, these are the guys out on the field on Sunday Night Football. So I understand people are frustrated with Jim Schwartz. I also understand he's a top 5 defensive coordinator in this league. They might not believe that today, but they're not adding that into the equation. Also, when you say Jim's not going to admit fault, he's also not going to throw those guys under the bus.
True.
He could. Anybody could. That's the easy way to go. But you do the best you can with the hand you're dealt, and they're dealing with significant injuries.
Well, you wrote about that today. You said they're not an excuse, but they're an explanation.
Exactly. You know, I think people looked at the Eagles going to the Super Bowl last season and winning it without Carson Wentz and Jordan Hicks and Jason Peters. You know all the names. And they expected that's the new normal. That's the outlier. Usually when that happens, you completely fall apart. And arguably the injuries have been even worse this year because they've been centralized in certain positions. Early in the season, it was receiver. Now it's the secondary, whereas last year it was all over. Yeah, quarterback is the most important part, but you had a good backup in Nick Foles. It's one linebacker. It's one offensive lineman. All of a sudden, you have multiple injuries at certain positions. So it's been, in a lot of ways, it's been even worse this season.
John McMullen's with us. You mentioned the injuries in the secondary. You mentioned Chandon Sullivan. Will we see more of Chandon Sullivan this week, or do they expect to get some help back there? Because if not, it won't be Sunday night. It'll be primetime Fox afternoon that they're going to be getting smoked on.
Yeah, well, I think they're going to get smoked anyway. I mean, look at Drew Brees. Look at the season he's having. He's completing 77% of his passes, which is just.
This team lost to Tampa at home. They barely beat the Browns.
Yeah, they were not good early in the season, and you can score on them. So, I mean, if the Eagles have a chance to win this game, it's going to be in a shootout. So we're going to be ultimately talking about the offense. And can they put it together? Because they keep piling up yardage, but it doesn't result in the efficacy of points, which is the most important part of it. And they got to fix that. And certainly they got to fix it to win a game like this, because the Saints are what they are. I mean, they have weapons all over the place and difficult weapons to deal with. And specifically Kamara coming out of the backfield. Eagles have been really bad with running backs catching the football out of the backfield, and this is the best one in the NFL at doing it. Michael Thomas has been the best receiver. I just mentioned Drew Brees. He gets the football out of his hands. He never gets sacked. 77% of his passes are completed. 22-1 touchdown to interception ratio. It's video game numbers. And if Chandon Sullivan is out there, it's going to be bad, but I got news for you. Sidney Jones said he's going to be back this week. We'll get a better feel for that tomorrow at practice. But if it's Sidney Jones, Rasul Douglas, and Avonte Knox, it's still not good.
So much that we will dive into this and a lot of NFL news, by the way. Le'Veon Bell won't report. He's out for the year. Terrell Pryor cut from the Bills. Rams, Chiefs, that game Monday night. Oh, yeah, that might have a new location. We got plenty of NFL the rest of the week right here on 97.3 ESPN. At JF McMullen, he appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks, pal.
Hey, thanks, guys.